Hello everybody out there, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan if you're new here, and if you're not new here, then welcome back. I have always been prone to anxiety, although there have been a number of habits and techniques that I've adopted over the years that have helped immensely in decreasing it for me. So it's no longer as bad as it used to be. If you're someone out there who has struggled with anxiety, I think we all know how incredibly isolating it can be and frustrating and scary sometimes. So I hope that you'll learn a thing or two in this video. These are all things that have personally helped me. I'm going to be covering a number of things from mindsets to lifestyle and nutrition tips as well. So let's get started. Anxiety originates in the brain, and there's a part of our brain called the cortex that can produce anxiety for us through things like misinterpretations, mental images that we create, or fearful thoughts. And thoughts directly impact our emotions. And we can actually reduce anxiety and stress by replacing uncomfortable thoughts with coping thoughts or positive affirmations. The more that you do it, the more that you're able to kind of unlearn a lot of the negativity that we are constantly telling ourselves, so that it becomes second nature for us to think more positively and not always think up worst case scenario type thoughts or other sorts of fearful thoughts. One of my personal favorites is "I'll handle it." This is particularly good if you tend to be someone who does a lot of what if. The more you repeat that to yourself, the more you can really realize that, yep, really, no matter what, you'll handle it. I'll leave a link below to a downloadable PDF affirmations guide that I have that you can download for free if you want to check it out. It's also important to remember that thoughts do not always equate reality, and it's really important for us to discern between a realistic thought and a faux truth, as I like to call them, faux truths, which are really just very, very believable thoughts, but that aren't actually even true. They're just thoughts. While we can consciously modify our thought patterns, we sometimes can't always talk or reason ourselves out of anxiety by changing our thoughts. I learned this from an audiobook that I listened to on Audible recently called Rewire Your Anxious Brain by Catherine Pittman and Elizabeth Carl. It is such a fantastic book. They take a neuroscience approach and they explain that anxiety is produced in two different pathways in your brain. Your cortex, which is responsible for like your thoughts, logic, intuition, that sort of thing like we talked about, and your amygdala, which is responsible for kind of constantly scanning our surroundings for potential harm and activating our stress response, sometimes without us even understanding why. But a lot of times this occurs because of a negative association that our brain has made with a past experience that it stores as danger for future reference. So this is why trying to talk ourselves out of feeling anxious does not always work, and why instead it's so important to do things to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. So this is something I've talked about in previous videos, but our parasympathetic nervous system is a branch of our nervous system that's responsible for basically keeping us feeling calm. So our muscles are relaxed, our heart rate and our blood pressure is balanced, basically the opposite of our stress response. There's a number of different ways that we can activate our parasympathetic nervous system, but one of the best ways that has a lot of research and studies behind it is meditation with a focus on your breath. This has actually been shown to reduce stress, calm anxiety, calm down the amygdala long-term and short-term, and activate our parasympathetic nervous system. It also helps us to cope with stress, even if it's just 2 or 3 minutes a day where you can set a timer and just focus on your breath. It is so helpful to know which kind of anxiety that you're dealing with, so you know the best approach for overcoming it. I learned in the audiobook that I've mostly struggled with a cortex-based anxiety, so a lot of rumination and worry and coming up with worst case scenarios. Now, a big thank you to Audible for partnering with me on today's video, and if you want to learn more about the type of anxiety that you are experiencing and a number of other science-backed methods for overcoming anxiety, you can get Rewire Your Anxious Brain for free, or another one absolutely of your choice, plus a 30-day free trial when you sign up at audible.com/Meghan Livingstone or text Meghan Livingstone to 500 500. You'll also get 2 Audible originals each month as well. I'm made the decision a few years ago to start pushing myself to say yes to more and more opportunities, even if they're nerve-wracking for me. When we let our fears make decisions for us, we fuel it further. When we are constantly choosing to stay in our comfort zone, we never allow ourselves to rise above the things that make us feel anxious. If anything, it'll just make anxiety even worse. This is definitely not always easy, but when we do face our fears, that's when we really start to realize that it's not always as scary as we think it is. There's a lot of interesting research on just how effective it is basically to face our fears, and I can definitely attest to this in my own life. If it wasn't for me just choosing to do the things that made me feel nervous or afraid, I wouldn't have been able to overcome them and feel more confident in my life today. Acceptance was probably the biggest turning point for me in overcoming the anxiety that I experienced when it was at its worst, actually, after a bad concussion that I had many years ago. And this might sound counterintuitive to just accept your anxiety, but what it really means is that you stop resistance to it. When we resist anxiety, or anything for that matter, it intensifies because we become fearful of it. But when we accept our anxiety and almost kind of welcome it, it has nothing to grasp onto, and the result is an inevitable decrease in anxiousness. And one of the ways that we can start to practice a little bit more acceptance is actually through mindfulness. Mindfulness, by definition, is simply the state of being conscious or aware of something. And when we take a mindfulness approach to anxiety, we're observing ourselves outside of the anxiety and kind of on the outside looking in. This helps you to become more open to and accepting of whatever it is that you're feeling, whether it's anxiety or really any other kind of emotion. There is so much research out there that shows that aerobic exercise decreases anxiety and stress. It's very anti-stress, not only because we get to experience endorphins and other feel-good neurotransmitters like serotonin, but it acts as almost an outlet for us. When we are feeling anxious, we're able to kind of expend that energy and make sure that you're doing something that you really enjoy doing. That'll help you do it more regularly. I have a whole video up on how we can love exercise, so be sure to check out that video. I'll leave it linked below if you want some tips. While there are many factors that contribute to anxiety, like I have talked about in this video, putting an emphasis on nutrient-dense foods can have a way bigger impact than you would think. I'm going to share a few specific nutrition tips with you here. Some of these vitamins are things you can take in supplement form if you would like to, but be sure to speak to your healthcare provider for specific doses. The first one are B vitamins, B complex vitamins. These are particularly good for our adrenal glands, so helping with our stress response. Some great sources of B vitamins are spirulina, spinach, lentils, eggs, sunflower seeds. Magnesium is another fantastic mineral that's very, very anti-stress and very anti-anxiety. Magnesium has the ability to help us to relax our muscles. It also helps with nerve function. Blood pressure is another one, really, really good for cardiovascular health. Anytime that you are thinking of magnesium and other kinds of minerals like calcium as well, think green, so think your dark leafy greens. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin that has so many roles in our body for mood, cognitive function, as well as bone health and immune boosting abilities as well. It's able to play a role in things like seasonal affective disorder. So I personally take vitamin D throughout the winter months. It gets pretty dark and gloomy here in Canada. Healthy fats, namely omega-3 fatty acids, are particularly good for cognitive function and mood balance. Fish and fish oils, flax or flaxseed oil, hemp, and eggs are all great sources. And lastly, I want to mention the importance of avoiding or reducing caffeine. Caffeine is a nervous system stimulant and can really exacerbate symptoms of anxiety. Even if it's just 1 cup of coffee a day, sometimes that can still disrupt our sleep or lead to increased levels of anxiety. So try reducing it or switching to something like herbal tea. And that's it for today, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you learned a thing or two. Everybody deals with stress and anxiety differently, so definitely leave your comments below. And that's about it. I will see you all very, very soon. Bye.